I pressed my back against the cold bathroom tiles, trying to silence my breathing. My heart pounded like a drum, loud enough I feared it would give me away. I could hear his boots stomping through the hallway, getting closer and closer. His voice was rough and angry, calling my name. Lucy, where are you? I clutched the tiny bottle of eye drops tightly in my hand. I was just a few seconds away from doing the unthinkable. I had made up my mind. I was going to pretend to be blind. Not temporarily, not for a day or two. I was going to act like I had completely lost my sight. I had studied the symptoms for weeks. I had practiced my reactions in front of a mirror every night while he was asleep. I had a plan. Because that was the only way I could escape my abusive husband without him suspecting anything. You see, a blind woman couldn't pack a bag and run away. A blind woman couldn't find her way out. A blind woman wasn't a threat. He would finally leave me alone. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there would finally believe I needed help. I slowly unscrewed the cap. My hands were shaking. I held my breath and tilted my head back. That was the moment I dropped the first drops into my eyes. Now pause for a second. Before I tell you what happened after that moment, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Lucy Carter. I'm 69 years old and I live in a small town called Asheville in North Carolina, USA. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my shocking life stories. And before we continue, tell me in the comments, from which part of the world are you watching this? I'd love to know where my brave listeners are tuning in from. Now let's go back to the very beginning. I met Patrick Carter when I was just 24 years old. Back then, he wasn't the monster he eventually became. In fact, he was sweet, charming, a real gentleman. I met him at a town fair, holding cotton candy in one hand and a shy smile in the other. He was 6 years older than me, had just come back from military service, and looked like someone who'd protect you from all the bad things in the world. Little did I know he was the bad thing in the world I needed protection from. We dated for 6 months before he proposed. I was young, naive, and thought love could fix anything. My mother had her doubts. She said he looked like the kind of man who always wanted to be in control. But I didn't listen. I told her, "Mama, he's a veteran. He's just used to structure." Mama gave me that sad, knowing look. The kind mothers give when they know you're walking into fire but can't drag you out. Our wedding was simple, nothing too grand. Just friends, family, a local pastor, and a lot of smiles that would later fade. The first year of marriage was good. Quiet. He worked construction during the day and came home tired. We made dinner together. We laughed. We even talked about having kids one day. But the second year, things started changing. He lost his job and refused to look for another. He started drinking. A lot. At first, he'd only raise his voice. Then he started breaking things, mugs, chairs, anything close to his reach when he was angry. One night, I accidentally spilled soup on the table. That was the first time he hit me. I still remember the sting on my cheek. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I was too shocked to feel anything. He apologized immediately. Said he didn't mean to. That it was the alcohol. That he loved me. I wanted to believe him. I chose to believe him. And that was my mistake. Because once you forgive a slap, it turns into a punch. Then a kick. Then worse. Year by year, Patrick got more violent. I became a shadow of myself. I stopped going out. Stopped calling friends. He isolated me. I wasn't allowed to get a job. I had to earn his trust. I had to be a good wife. But even when I was quiet, cooked his meals, cleaned the house, and stayed out of his way, he still found a reason to hurt me. Sometimes just because he felt like it. One night, after he'd thrown my clothes outside and made me sleep on the porch because I didn't put enough salt in the stew, I knew I had to get out. But how? Patrick was smart. Cunning. He had people in town who respected him. Nobody would believe a crazy old woman over a war hero. I tried calling a shelter once. He caught me. Took my phone. Locked me in the basement for 2 days without food. I knew then I couldn't escape the normal way. So I came up with a plan. If I couldn't leave as Lucy Carter, I would leave as someone else. Someone helpless. I began researching blindness. How people walked. How they reacted to light. I watched interviews. I studied the way they moved their hands, their eyes. At night, I practiced walking around with my eyes closed. Patrick noticed I was acting strange, but he thought it was just age catching up to me. That worked in my favor. I even made up a fake condition, retinitis pigmentosa. I told him I had trouble seeing at night, that I was getting dizzy, that the doctor said my vision was going fast. At first, he didn't believe me. Then one day, I walked into the kitchen wall and fell hard on purpose. He laughed. "Old bat can't even see straight," he said. And just like that, he stopped bothering me so much. He thought my disability made me weak. But I was never weaker. I was becoming stronger than I'd ever been. The more he left me alone, the more time I had to prepare. I hid a burner phone inside a box of detergent in the laundry room. I packed a bag and placed it under the floorboard in our bedroom. I even wrote a note for my niece Sarah in Atlanta and kept it in my bra at all times, just in case something happened to me. But the most important part was making sure Patrick believed I was truly blind. And that's where the eye drops came in. I'd read that a few drops of belladonna extract, diluted of course, could dilate the pupils, make eyes extra sensitive to light, and blur vision temporarily. I knew a woman at church who grew the plant in her backyard. I told her it was for a school science project I was helping my neighbor's kid with, and she believed me. That night, when Patrick was out drinking with his buddies, I sat on the bathroom floor, holding the bottle. Everything had to be perfect. 1 drop, 2 drops. My eyes began to burn. I blinked rapidly as tears rolled down my cheeks. Everything around me turned fuzzy, like fog on a mirror. I practiced stumbling. I practiced not reacting when a light was turned on. I even practiced looking in the wrong direction when someone talked to me. The plan was working. But that night, as I crawled back into bed pretending to grope for the blanket, Patrick came home early. And he wasn't alone. He brought someone with him. A woman. They stumbled into the living room laughing. I stayed still. Listened. Then I heard something that made my blood go cold. Patrick was planning to sell the house. He didn't know I'd heard. But I did. And what he said next shook me to my core. "I'll just put her in a home. Nobody wants a blind old hag anyway." That was the moment I realized my time was running out. And the very next morning, he dragged me into the car. He said we were going on a ride. But I knew better. This was it. This was the beginning of the end. The road was long and I couldn't see a thing. But the feeling in my chest told me he was taking me somewhere I might never come back from. The engine hummed as we sped down the road. I sat stiff in the passenger seat, pretending to stare blankly into nothing. I blinked slowly, as if I didn't know which direction to look. My heart was pounding inside my chest like a drum. I could feel sweat dripping down my back. Patrick hadn't said much since we left the house. His jaw was clenched, and he gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. The air between us was heavy. Too heavy. I tried to breathe calmly, pretending I had no clue where we were going. But deep inside I knew. He was going to dump me somewhere. A home. A hospital. Maybe a ditch. He thought I was blind. He thought I couldn't see the signposts. But I could still read. I could still think. And I could still plan. I turned my face toward him slowly and asked, "Patrick, where are we going?" "To get help," he said sharply. "You're losing your mind. You're getting worse. It's time someone took care of you properly." I faked a confused expression. "What do you mean, help?" He scoffed. "You'll see." That word "see" made my stomach twist. I almost let out a bitter laugh. If only he knew I could see. I wasn't blind. Not really. I was pretending. Pretending so I could escape the years of torment. The bruises. The insults. The nights I cried quietly on the floor, praying for a miracle. That ride felt like it would never end. But eventually we stopped. Patrick opened the car door and came around to my side. He yanked the door open and grabbed my arm roughly. "Let's go," he grunted. I stumbled out, exaggerating my weakness. I tilted my head as if trying to listen carefully to my surroundings. From what I could make out, we were outside an old brick building. The kind with iron fences and faded signs. There was a nurse by the front door. Patrick called out to her. "This is Lucy. She's blind. Can't take care of herself anymore. You got a room for her?" The nurse looked at me with kind, gentle eyes. She crouched beside me and said softly, "Hi Lucy. Can you tell me how long you've been having trouble seeing?" I whispered, "A few months. It got worse last week." She reached for my hand. "You're going to be okay. We're here to help you." Patrick snorted. "Good luck with that. She's all yours." And just like that he walked away.
No hug. No goodbye. No explanation.
He left me like a piece of garbage. The nurse helped me inside. Her name was Sharon. She led me to a small room with a narrow bed and white walls. It wasn't home. But it wasn't his house either. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. Each second felt like freedom slipping in. I had escaped, but I wasn't safe yet, because 3 days later, he came back with a court order, saying I was mentally unstable, saying I had imagined the abuse, saying I wasn't fit to make decisions for myself anymore. I found out he wanted to sell our house and keep all the money. But to do that legally, he had to prove I wasn't in my right mind. That I was blind, broken, lost. He'd filed paperwork saying I was delusional, dangerous even. I couldn't believe it. The same man who made me sleep in the cold. The same man who shoved me down the stairs. The same man who once made me eat scraps off the floor because I disrespected him. Now he was trying to erase me. Luckily, one of the nurses, Sharon, had begun to notice things. Like how I always seemed to walk around without bumping into things. How my eyes sometimes followed movement. One evening, she sat beside me and asked, "Lucy, can you really not see?" My heart stopped. I swallowed hard. Then I whispered, "Please don't tell anyone. I'm trying to escape my husband. I'm not really blind, but I had no other choice." She looked at me in silence for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You need help. Real help." The next day, Sharon secretly called a women's legal aid group. She gave them my name, told them what I'd been through. They came to see me 2 days later. But before they could take action, something terrible happened. Late one night, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking. I sat up in bed, heart racing. Footsteps. Loud. Angry. Heavy. And then his voice. Patrick. He was inside the facility. He had broken in. He stormed down the hall, shouting my name. "Lucy, you think you can lie to me? You think you can trick me?" I jumped out of bed, panicking. Nurses were trying to stop him, but he pushed past them like a wild bull. And then, he kicked open my door. And for the first time he saw me standing tall.
No cane.
No confused expression.
No blindness.
Just me, looking straight into his eyes. "You can see." I took a deep breath. "Yes, Patrick. I can." And right then and there, he charged at me like a madman. He lunged at me like a beast, his face twisted with rage I had never seen before. The nurses screamed. One tried to hold him back, but he shoved her aside with the strength of a monster. For a second I froze. My body remembered all the times he'd hit me, all the times I was too scared to fight back. But not this time. Not anymore. This time I was ready. As Patrick charged toward me, I grabbed the metal lamp from the table beside my bed and swung it with all my strength. It hit his shoulder hard. He stumbled, groaned, but didn't stop. His hand grabbed the collar of my gown, yanking me forward. "You lied to me," he roared. "You lied to me for 20 years. I snapped back. "Now it's my turn." That's when security burst into the room. 2 guards tackled Patrick to the ground as he kicked and screamed like a wild animal. Nurses rushed in. Someone pulled me back just in time before he could strike again. My knees were shaking, but I didn't fall. I didn't cry. I stood there and watched as they pinned him down and called the police. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Not mine. When the officers arrived, they arrested him immediately. Sharon, the kind nurse who had helped me, gave her statement. So did the others. They described everything. How he broke into the facility, how he attacked staff, how he tried to hurt me. And me? I gave them the truth. All of it. I told them about the years of abuse, the bruises, the threats, the plan to make me look crazy. And yes, I told them I faked being blind. That part shocked them. One officer asked, "Why go that far?" And I looked him dead in the eyes and said, Because no one believes a woman until she's broken. And I refused to be broken. The police left with Patrick in handcuffs. His eyes were wild, filled with hatred. He kept shouting that I was lying, that I was insane. But this time no one listened to him. They listened to me. I thought it was over. I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. 2 days later, someone slipped an envelope under my room door. There was no name on it. Just a single piece of paper inside. It said, "You think this is over? You'll regret what you did." There was no signature. No proof. But I knew exactly who sent it. Patrick had friends. People who owed him favors. People who believed his lies. And now that I had exposed him, I was a target. I showed the letter to Sharon and the staff. They took it seriously. The facility increased security. For a while, everything seemed calm again. I stayed quiet. I didn't leave my room much. I spent my days reading and praying, hoping this nightmare would end soon. Then one morning something unexpected happened. A young woman walked into the facility, asking for me by name. She had big brown eyes and curly hair tied in a ponytail. She wore a green sweater and clutched her purse tightly. "My name is Sarah," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm Lucy's niece." My heart leapt. I hadn't seen Sarah in over 15 years. She was just a teenager when I last held her in my arms. But here she was, all grown up. I stood up slowly and hugged her. I didn't want to let go. "I got your letter," she whispered. "The one you hid in your bra. A nurse found it when they did your laundry. She sent it to my last known address. I came as soon as I could." I felt tears in my eyes. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. We sat and talked for hours. I told her everything. About Patrick. About the fake blindness. About the night he broke in. She held my hand tightly. "You're safe now, Aunt Lucy. You're not going back to him. Not ever." With Sarah's help, we began filing for a restraining order. The lawyers from the women's shelter stepped in too. They were already building a case to press charges against Patrick. Not just for assault, but for years of domestic violence. I thought things were finally turning around. But darkness was still lurking. One afternoon, Sarah went to get some groceries. She was only gone for 20 minutes. When she returned, her car window was smashed. And there was another note on the seat. "She'll never be free. I made her. I can break her." Sarah was terrified. She wanted to take me away from the facility, move me in with her in Atlanta. We packed my things in secret. Left in the middle of the night with no warning. We thought we had escaped. We were wrong. 3 weeks later, as I was settling into Sarah's guest room, something strange happened. A man showed up at the house pretending to be a social worker. Said he was doing a wellness check. But something felt off. He asked too many questions. Kept glancing around the house like he was looking for something. When Sarah asked to see his badge again, he claimed he forgot it in the car, then ran off. We called the police. They searched the area, but he was gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window holding a kitchen knife. Not because I wanted to fight, but because I was done being afraid. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to testify against Patrick. I would stand in front of a judge, a jury, the entire world, and tell them what he did to me. I was no longer pretending to be blind, but I would never again close my eyes to the truth. The trial was set for the next month. And just when we thought we could start preparing for it, something happened. Something that sent chills through my bones. We came home one day and found the front door wide open. Sarah dropped the grocery bags. "Did you leave the door unlocked?" I shook my head.
No.
"I never do." We walked in slowly. The living room was a mess. Cushions torn. Drawers pulled out. Broken glass on the floor. And on the mirror, written in red lipstick, were 5 chilling words. "I know where you sleep." The lipstick letters on the mirror sent ice down my spine. "I know where you sleep." Those 5 words felt heavier than any blow Patrick had ever landed on me. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move, unable to speak. Sarah backed up, her hand covering her mouth. We didn't scream. We didn't panic. We just stood there in shock, watching the room as if something or someone was still inside. Sarah finally whispered, "Aunt Lucy, we need to call the police. Now." I nodded slowly. My knees felt like jelly. She grabbed her phone with trembling fingers and dialed 911. I heard her voice shake as she explained everything: the break-in, the threats, the lipstick on the mirror. The operator said officers would be there in 10 minutes. But 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. We locked the front door and stayed in the kitchen, holding on to each other like our lives depended on it. My hands were sweating, my heart beating fast. I kept looking around, half expecting Patrick to jump out from behind a wall. When the police arrived, 2 officers came inside with flashlights and guns drawn. They cleared every room before calling us in. No one was there. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. Just the chilling message and the broken pieces of our peace. "It looks like someone had a key," one officer said. "Do you think he still has a copy from your old place?" I shook my head. "We changed the locks. Twice." Sarah added, "No one else has access but me." That night, we didn't sleep. Sarah and I took turns watching the front and back doors. Every creak, every sound outside made us jump. It felt like being hunted. Like we were never truly safe, no matter where we went. The next morning, the police returned to install a camera by the front door. They also gave us a small panic alarm. One push, and they'd send a car. It brought little comfort. That same day, I received a phone call. It was from the district attorney. "Aunt Lucy," the woman said gently, "I just wanted to inform you that Patrick Carter has posted bail." I nearly dropped the phone. "He's out," I whispered. "Yes." His lawyers argued he had no prior convictions, and the judge agreed. "He's under a restraining order, but we both know how thin those papers can feel." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. She continued, "We're moving your testimony up. 1 week from today. We need to get this to court before anything worse happens." I hung up the phone and sat down. He was out. The man who terrorized me for decades. The man who once locked me in the bathroom for an entire weekend with no food. The man who nearly killed me more times than I could count. And now he was walking free. And worse, he knew where I lived. But if he thought I'd hide again, he was wrong. The next few days were a blur of lawyers, statements, and interviews. I told my story to investigators. I handed them journals I had secretly written through the years, filled with dates, injuries, and things he'd said. Sarah helped gather old photos, ones that showed bruises on my arms and dark circles under my eyes. They all told the same story. That I was living in fear. But something still didn't feel right. One night, just 3 days before the trial, I heard something strange. It was just after midnight. Sarah had gone to bed, and I was in the kitchen drinking warm tea. That's when I heard it. A whisper. From outside the window. I turned slowly and walked over. I didn't see anyone. But I did see something. On the glass was a single handprint. Fresh. Too high up to be a child. Too wide to be a woman's. Patrick had been watching me. Maybe he never left. I woke Sarah and we called the police again. This time they sent a detective. A serious-looking man named Detective Harris. He examined the handprint. "It's recent," he said. "He's trying to scare you into not testifying." I looked at him. "It won't work." He nodded. "I believe you. But you need to be ready. He's desperate. And desperate men are dangerous." The next day, I was preparing my notes for court when Sarah burst into the room. Pale and shaking. "Aunt Lucy, come quick." I followed her to the porch. Lying on the welcome mat was a box. Inside it was a dead bird. Its wings had been clipped off. And taped to its chest was another note. "I'm watching. You speak, you die." Sarah gasped. "We have to run. Let's go somewhere far. He'll never stop." But I grabbed her hand and said, "No, baby. I'm tired of running. If I run now, I'll never stop. It's time I fight back. Not with fists. With truth." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm scared." "So am I," I said. "But fear is what he wants. And I'm done giving him what he wants." That night, I barely slept. My body was tired, but my mind was sharp. I rehearsed every word I planned to say in court. Every memory. Every scar. Every lie he told that I would now expose. The morning of the trial arrived. I wore a simple dress. No makeup. I wanted them to see me as I truly was, a survivor, not a victim. As we drove to the courthouse, my hands trembled. Sarah reached over and held them tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. When we arrived, cameras were everywhere. Reporters, curious faces, people holding signs that said "Justice for Lucy," strangers who had heard my story on the news. Inside the courtroom, Patrick sat with his lawyer looking smug. But when I walked in standing tall, not blind, not broken, I saw it. Fear. He never expected me to make it this far. The judge called my name. It was time. I stood, took the oath, and walked to the witness stand. The courtroom was silent. I took a deep breath, looked around, and said, "My name is Lucy Carter. I am not blind. But I had to pretend to be, because that was the only way I could escape the man who spent 20 years beating me, breaking me, and nearly burying me." Gasps echoed in the room. But I didn't stop. I told them everything. From the first slap to the last note. From the fake blindness to the break-ins. I told them how he isolated me, humiliated me, tried to erase me. I told them about the bird, the lipstick, the night he charged into my room. And when I finished, the judge said something I'll never forget. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter. You are brave." I thought it was over. But as I stepped down from the witness stand, Patrick stood up from his chair, and he shouted something that made every officer in the room reach for their guns. I should have finished the job when I had the chance. The moment those words left Patrick's mouth, I should have finished the job when I had the chance. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Gasps and screams echoed off the walls. Officers rushed forward, surrounding him. One shouted, "Hands where we can see them." Another placed a hand firmly on his shoulder. Patrick's eyes locked on mine. That old fire, that hate, it was back, burning brighter than ever. But I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I met his stare with all the strength I had left in me. He tried to lunge across the courtroom table. His lawyer jumped back. A police officer tackled him mid-motion. He was restrained and dragged out of the courtroom, kicking and cursing like a wild dog. The judge banged her gavel. "Order! Order in the court!" I was trembling. But not from fear. From adrenaline. From the realization that the monster who controlled my life for decades had finally lost his control. In front of the world. The judge cleared her throat, eyes sharp. "Due to the defendant's violent outburst and violation of his release terms, bail is revoked immediately. He will remain in custody until trial concludes." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. Some clapped quietly. Others cried. Sarah rushed to me and threw her arms around me, whispering, "You did it. You're doing it." But I knew it wasn't over yet. That night, back at Sarah's house, we both sat silently by the window, staring into the dark yard. My phone buzzed. It was a message from the legal team. "He'll be charged with contempt. You'll be asked to return tomorrow for cross-examination. Be strong, Lucy. You're changing lives." I held the phone close to my chest and looked up at Sarah. "I'm not doing this just for me," I told her. "I'm doing this for every woman still trapped like I once was." She nodded. "And they're watching you now." The next day in court, I returned for the cross-examination. Patrick's new lawyer, a younger man, smug and confident, stood up. He tried to break me down, tried to twist my words. "So, Mrs. Carter," he said, walking slowly around the courtroom, "you're saying you pretended to be blind. How do we know you're not pretending now?" Laughter snorted from Patrick's side. His eyes were smug again. I leaned toward the microphone. "Because the only thing I'm pretending now is that I'm not terrified standing here. But I'm still standing, aren't I?" Silence. His lawyer pushed harder. "But faking a disability, that's deceitful. Don't you think people will find that hard to forgive?" I smiled slightly. "You know what's harder to forgive? 20 years of bruises, of broken bones, of nights I slept on the kitchen floor because I wasn't obedient enough. Faking blindness was my last chance to survive a man who made me feel invisible even with perfect vision." The courtroom was still. Even the judge nodded slightly. I had survived. The next few days were filled with testimonies from others, neighbors, nurses, even Sharon from the facility. Each one painted the same picture of a man who controlled, who manipulated, who hurt without guilt. One elderly neighbor said, "I used to hear screams at night, but when I asked if she was okay, she'd always smile and say it was nothing. Now I realize that smile was her mask." Sarah testified too. She cried on the stand, describing how she found the dead bird, the lipstick on the mirror, the man pretending to be a social worker. "He wanted to make her afraid again," she said, her voice shaking. "But all he did was make her stronger." Finally, it was time for closing statements. The prosecutor, a strong and confident woman, stood tall before the jury. "This is not just about Lucy Carter," she began. "This is about every woman who ever thought no one would believe her. About every victim too afraid to speak. Lucy found a way to survive. And today we ask you to help her find justice." The jury left to deliberate. Hours passed. Long, heavy hours. We sat together in the waiting room. Me, Sarah, Sharon, the lawyers, all holding our breath. Then, the door opened. The juries reached a verdict. We walked back into the courtroom. Patrick sat in his orange prison jumpsuit now, cuffed at the wrists. No smug look.
No smirk.
Just silence. The judge looked over the paper in front of her and said, "Will the jury foreman please stand?" An older gentleman rose. "In the case of the People versus Patrick Carter, we find the defendant." He paused. My heart stopped. "Guilty on all charges." I gasped. Sarah burst into tears. The judge continued, "Sentencing will occur next week, but this court thanks Mrs. Lucy Carter for her bravery." Cheers broke out in the gallery. Reporters scribbled wildly. Some people stood and clapped. But me? I just sat there breathing. Finally breathing. After the verdict, Sarah and I stepped outside the courthouse. The sun was shining bright. Warmth I hadn't felt in years soaked into my skin. Reporters ran toward me with microphones. "Lucy, do you have anything to say to other women like you?" I turned to the camera and said softly, "Yes. You are not weak. You are not alone. And you are not broken. Sometimes you have to do something crazy just to survive. And that's okay. Because survival is strength." I reached into my purse and pulled out the fake glasses I used to wear during my blind act. I held them up and dropped them into a trash can. I don't need to pretend anymore. Later that night, we celebrated quietly. Just me, Sarah, and a few friends. Sharon sent flowers. My old pastor called. Even some neighbors I hadn't seen in years stopped by. But just when we thought it was all behind us, the phone rang. Sarah picked it up. Her face turned pale again. "Aunt Lucy," she whispered, covering the receiver. "That was the prison." I stood up slowly. "What is it?" They said Patrick, he tried to harm himself. My heart skipped. "They're transferring him to a secure hospital," she continued. "But before they sedated him, he said something." I braced myself. Sarah swallowed hard. "He said, she may have won the battle, but not the war." I stood there staring at Sarah, my ears ringing with the echo of Patrick's words. She may have won the battle, but not the war. My body went cold. Even in a locked facility, even sedated, Patrick still found a way to creep into my peace like a shadow. I sat down slowly, trying to catch my breath. My fingers curled tightly around the edge of the table. Sarah kneeled in front of me, holding my hand. "He's trying to scare you. That's all he's ever known, fear and control." I nodded, but deep down I knew something wasn't right. Patrick didn't bluff. Not once in 20 years. If he said there was a war, he meant it. The prison hospital kept him for observation. Doctors confirmed he hadn't tried to kill himself, just hurt himself badly enough to trigger a transfer. But why? And then it hit me. He was buying time. A few days later, we got confirmation. Patrick had filed a motion through his lawyer. He was appealing his conviction. The news hit me like a punch to the chest. He was trying to fight his way back to freedom. Even after everything. Even after the verdict. And that wasn't the worst part. His appeal was based on one thing. My blindness. Or rather, my fake blindness. His lawyer claimed that by faking blindness, I had deceived the court, the police, and the public, and that my entire testimony could be tainted by manipulation. They called me a liar. A fraud. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I let them talk. I let them prepare. Because while Patrick was planning his revenge, I was preparing my truth. The day of the appeal hearing, we walked into the courtroom and saw Patrick again. He looked thinner, paler, but those eyes, those cruel, calculating eyes, hadn't changed. His new lawyer stood up and painted me as a cunning actress who manipulated everyone to win sympathy. He replayed clips of me testifying, photos of me walking with glasses and a cane. He even showed a blurry video from a hallway security camera of me reaching for a doorknob without missing. But I didn't flinch. Because when it was my turn to speak, I stood up and told the court something I had never said before. I faked being blind. I began, because the world turns a blind eye to abuse until a woman is broken beyond recognition. I had no one. No phone. No freedom. Faking blindness was the only way to stop him from watching me, hurting me, following my every move. It wasn't a lie, it was a lifeline. I paused, letting that sink in. I didn't deceive the court. I deceived my abuser. I survived him. That's what this case is about. Survival. And survival doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes it looks like pretending to be blind just so you can finally see the way out. The courtroom was silent. Even Patrick looked unsure for the first time. Then Sarah stood and addressed the court as my witness. I saw the bruises. I saw the fear. I saw how she had to trick her way to freedom, because the system had failed her. The judge listened quietly, scribbling notes. Then she took a deep breath and said, "This court denies the motion to overturn the conviction. Mr. Carter will serve his full sentence, 25 years with no possibility of parole." Relief washed over me. Sarah grabbed my hand and squeezed it tightly. But even as Patrick was being taken away, he turned back one last time. His lips moved, and though I couldn't hear his words, I could read them clear as day. This isn't over. After the hearing, life slowly began to return to something close to normal. Sarah and I moved again. We changed numbers, deleted old accounts. We wanted peace. I even joined a support group for women who survived abuse. I told my story, and other women told theirs. I met a woman named Grace, who lived with a man who never hit her, but made her feel worthless every single day. I met a teenager named Holly, whose stepfather controlled every aspect of her life. Even what she wore, who she talked to. They were all survivors. Like me. And we promised each other one thing. We'd speak up. Loudly. For every woman still trapped in silence. But just when I started to feel free, something strange happened. One morning, Sarah was out shopping. I was home alone, folding laundry, when I heard the doorbell ring. I peeked through the window. No one. Just a small brown envelope sitting on the doormat. My stomach dropped. I opened the door slowly, picked up the envelope and brought it inside. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. Of me. Sleeping. In my bed. My hands trembled so hard I almost dropped it. I hadn't taken that photo. Sarah hadn't taken that photo. Which meant someone had been in the house. I turned the photo over. On the back, scribbled in sharp, shaky handwriting, were the words, "You'll never see him coming." I stumbled back and dropped the photo on the table. My chest was tight, my breathing quick. Called Sarah. "Come home. Now." She rushed back in 20 minutes. I showed her the photo. She stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "This wasn't him." I looked up confused. "What?" "This handwriting, it's different. Look." She pulled out one of the old notes Patrick had sent. The loops, the lines, they were clean, controlled. The writing on the photo was messy, jagged, like someone in a panic. Or someone pretending. "Do you think someone else is helping him?" I asked. Sarah nodded slowly. "I think the war he promised isn't just from him. I think he has allies." That night, we checked all the doors, windows, and locks. We called the police, filed another report. But deep inside, we both knew. This wasn't just a threat anymore. This was the beginning of something darker. Someone else was involved. Someone watching us. And this time, they were already inside. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Every creak of the floorboards, every flutter of the curtains in the breeze, it all made my skin crawl. The photo of me sleeping was still on the kitchen table. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It felt like evidence. Proof that even with Patrick behind bars, the nightmare hadn't ended. Sarah barely slept that night. I could hear her pacing in the living room, checking the locks every hour. I stayed in bed, eyes wide open, clutching a flashlight and the small wooden cross my mother had given me when I was a child. I whispered prayers. Not for comfort but for courage. The next morning we drove straight to the police station. This isn't just a threat anymore, Sarah told the officer. Someone was inside our house. We need protection. Something more than a door alarm and a front porch camera. The officer, a tall woman with a soft voice but sharp eyes, nodded slowly. We'll open an investigation. And I'm going to connect you with someone from our Special Victims Unit. His name is Detective Rowe. He handles long-term stalking and abuse cases. He's very good. We met Detective Rowe the next day. He looked tired but kind. He carried a black notebook and wore a badge on his belt. He listened quietly as I told him everything, from the fake blindness to the trial, the threats, the photo. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. This isn't just harassment, he said. This is psychological warfare. Whoever took that photo didn't do it just to scare you. They want you to feel helpless again. They want you to fall apart. I stared at him. But Patrick's in prison. He can't be behind this. Rowe raised an eyebrow. Maybe not directly. But these kinds of men, they don't work alone. They build followers. Enablers. People who believe they're victims of a lying woman, instead of the other way around. I thought back to the day of the trial, how some men in the back row had glared at me. One even shook his head like he couldn't believe I was being allowed to speak. I hadn't noticed them leave. Rowe promised to increase patrols near our home. He also handed me a small black panic necklace. One press. Silent alert. Police will be there in under 5 minutes. I wore it like armor. But even that didn't help when the next attack came. It was 2 nights later. Sarah was working late. I was alone again. Reading in the living room when the power suddenly cut off. Total darkness swallowed the house. I froze. The silence was too deep. Not even the hum of the refrigerator. Just quiet. Then, a tap. On the window. Followed by another. Then the sound of footsteps. Deliberate. Slow. Just outside. I grabbed the panic button around my neck and pressed it hard. Then I reached for the flashlight under the couch and turned it on. The beam of light swept across the room and caught something on the window. A handprint. Fresh. Smudged. But no face. No figure. Just the sound of someone running away. The police arrived 5 minutes later. Lights flashing. Guns drawn. They searched the yard. Nothing.
No footprints. No fingerprints.
But they did find something in the backyard. A torn piece of fabric caught on the fence. Dark green. Military texture. The officer handed it to Rowe the next morning. He examined it and said, "We might be looking at someone who knew Patrick from his army days." My stomach sank. "You mean like a soldier?" I asked. "Or someone he trained with," Rowe replied. "Some of these guys form tight brotherhoods. Some of them believe in loyalty no matter what. Even when it means protecting a man like Patrick." Sarah's voice broke. "So even with him locked up, we're still in danger?" Rowe nodded. "Yes. But now we know what we're looking for." That evening, Sarah received a message on her phone from an unknown number. It was a photo of her in the grocery store parking lot. The caption read, "Your aunt lied, but you'll pay the price." That was the moment we realized this wasn't about me anymore. They were coming for her too. We packed bags and moved into a temporary safe house provided by the police. It was in a small gated apartment complex on the edge of town. Cameras, motion lights, and 24/7 security patrol. Felt safer. For a while. Days passed. Then a week. No letters. No photos.
No handprints.
We started to breathe again. I even made pancakes one morning. Sarah laughed for the first time in weeks. We danced to an old Marvin Gaye song in the kitchen like nothing had ever happened. Then the doorbell rang. Our hearts stopped. Sarah went to the peephole. No one. Just a package on the doorstep. We stared at it from the window. Neither of us moved. Finally, Rowe came with backup and opened the box. Inside were shredded newspaper clippings. Every article about Patrick's conviction. And a matchbox. From a bar called the Black Oak. We had never heard of it. Ro did some digging. It was an old dive bar 20 minutes outside of town. Mostly ex-military. A lot of Patrick's old army buddies used to hang out there before it was shut down 5 years ago. But recently, it had reopened. Different owner. Same crowd. That night, Ro and his team went to investigate. And what they found changed everything. A man named Russell Hayes, a retired sergeant who once served with Patrick, was running the bar. They found surveillance photos of me and Sarah hidden in a drawer behind the bar counter. Photos taken from long distances. Some were months old. Russell was arrested. And during interrogation he admitted everything. Patrick had contacted him from prison. He didn't say much, just that the woman who betrayed me needs to be reminded she's not safe. Russell took that as a mission. He admitted to following us, breaking into the house, taking the photo, smearing lipstick on the mirror, leaving the bird. But the worst part? He wasn't alone. He said others had volunteered. More men who believed Patrick. Ro called me the next day. We stopped one, he said. But this group isn't done. Not yet. I was quiet for a long time. Then I asked him, "What do I do now?" He paused, then replied gently, "Tell your story. Loudly. Publicly. Shine a light on them. These men live in the shadows. Make them afraid of you." I knew what I had to do. I called a journalist who had once asked for an interview after the trial. I said yes. We met 2 days later. I told her everything. Not just the abuse. Not just the fake blindness. Everything. The stalking. The threats. The group of men who called themselves the Guard. She called the story. The woman who pretended to be blind and saw everything. It went viral. Millions read it. Thousands of women messaged me. Some saying, "Me too." Others saying, "You gave me courage." But in the middle of all the support, one message stood out. No name.
No sender.
Just 6 chilling words. "You've started a war you'll lose." I didn't sleep the night that message came in. I kept staring at those 6 words. "You've started a war you'll lose." Sarah stayed close to me all night, her hand gripping mine tightly. I could feel the fear in her fingers, the questions she didn't want to ask out loud. Was it Russell again? Was someone else already watching us, waiting? The next morning, I met with Detective Ro again. I handed him my phone with the anonymous message. He scrolled slowly, expression tight. "It's not Russell. He's still in custody. This came from a different IP address. We're running a trace now." Then he looked up at me and said, "Lucy, you understand that when you went public, you didn't just tell your story. You exposed a hidden network. A dangerous one. These men, they think you embarrassed them." I nodded. "Good. Let them feel what I felt. Let them know I'm not afraid anymore." But that wasn't entirely true. Because deep down I was afraid. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid they'd find a way to ruin Sarah's life. To make her regret standing by me. I had been strong for so long. But I knew these men didn't play fair. They didn't show mercy. Still, I didn't back down. The articles stayed up. The interviews kept coming. I even went on a local news show and shared more details. But then, something worse happened. One morning, I got a call from the local women's shelter. A woman had shown up at their doorstep bruised, bleeding, and claiming that her husband had hurt her because of me. She said he was angry that I turned women against good men. Her name was Denise. She had 3 kids, and she had nowhere to go. The shelter had found her a place to stay, but they wanted to know if I could meet her. Talk to her. I hesitated, but I said yes. When I walked into that shelter and saw her, tiny, trembling and hiding half her face beneath a hoodie, I saw myself. I saw the woman I used to be. Scared. Silent. Shamed. She looked up at me and whispered. I told him I read your story. I said I wasn't going to take it anymore. He got so angry. I sat beside her and held her hand. You didn't do anything wrong, I told her. You stood up for yourself. And you survived. We cried together. She asked me one question before I left. Does the fear ever go away? I thought about it long and hard. Then I told her, no. But one day it becomes smaller than your courage. That moment gave me new fire. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about all the women like Denise. like me. So I launched something called the Blind Truth Project, a small organization that offered support, legal resources, and shelter for survivors of hidden abuse. We started raising money, building awareness, hosting self-defense workshops, and telling stories that needed to be heard. Sarah helped me run it. And every time I saw her smile during those events, I felt a piece of the old pain fade. But peace doesn't last long in war. One evening, as we were locking up after an event, Sarah's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of her school ID. Just the ID. Nothing else. We looked at each other, both of us frozen. Someone had followed her. Not online. In real life. And now they wanted us to know it. We contacted Ro immediately. This is an escalation, he said. They're sending you a warning. But what do they want? Sarah asked, trembling. Do they want us to stop talking? Or are they planning something worse? Ro looked grim. They want fear. They want silence. And if they can't get that, they'll settle for chaos. He advised us to lay low for a while, to pull back on public appearances, to change our routines. We even had to move to a different safe house, one even more secure. But something about that night stayed with me. The way the photo was taken, the way it was timed. It didn't feel random. It felt personal. That's when I started digging deeper into Patrick's past. I asked Ro to send me a list of names, anyone he used to serve with, work with, or call during his prison phone time. Most of it was redacted. But one name kept coming up. Mark Trigger Wallace. Former military. No criminal record. But known to have a temper. And he had a brother who worked in tech security. My gut told me, this was the one. The one helping the others stay hidden. The one pulling the strings while Russell rotted in jail. I shared this with Ro. And he promised to investigate. But before he could follow the lead,
flames lit up the
tragedy
night
struck.
sky like a
Sarah
terrible
didn't
sunset.
come home from school.
I stood frozen
called
in the
her
middle
friends,
of the road,
her teachers,
staring at the house
her
burning
school.
in front of me.
No one had seen
the
her
house where
since
Emily
last Emma
period.
was supposed
My
to
heart
be.
shattered.
My
I
legs
screamed,
refused to move.
cried,
My lungs
collapsed
felt
to the
crushed.
floor.
All
Then
I
my
could
phone
do was
rang.
whisper her name.
Private number.
Emma.
Picked
Jack
up
jumped out of
and
the
heard
car
a voice
and ran
I
toward
hadn't
the
heard
house,
in months,
shouting to the
Patrick,
neighbors.
from
Call
prison.
the fire department.
He spoke slowly.
Now.
Coldly.
His voice cut through the
You
chaos
took everything
like a
from me,
siren.
Lucy.
I stumbled
and now
forward.
I've taken something
the
from
heat
you.
from the flames
Eye for
pushing
an
against
eye.
my skin.
I dropped the phone.
Was she inside?
My Sarah was
I
missing.
too late? Suddenly, someone grabbed my hand. A girl, covered in ash, tears streaming down her face, breathing hard. Are you her? She asked. Are you Margaret? I couldn't speak. I could only stare at her. Those eyes. My eyes. Yes, I finally choked out. I'm your mother. She sobbed and threw her arms around me. I dropped to my knees, holding her, rocking her, crying so hard I thought my body would break in half. I saw you on the video, she whispered. I knew you were telling the truth. I knew it. You're safe now, I whispered. I've got you. No one's ever going to hurt you again. The fire had been set in the back of the house. Jack suspected arson immediately. The Carters weren't home. They'd left Emily with a neighbor for a few hours. That's when the fire started. Daniel's message was clear. If I can't control her, no one can. But he failed. We had her. And this time I wasn't running. I was fighting back. In the days that followed, we filed for immediate emergency custody. Ava's coverage of the fire, combined with the evidence Jack had recovered before the break-in, helped our case explode across national media. People rallied behind us. The Carters, once part of the silence, came forward to admit they had been pressured into adopting Emily under suspicious conditions. They had believed she'd been abandoned, lied to just like me. It wasn't easy. There were interviews, court hearings, background checks, psych evaluations. But eventually, the judge looked at me and said the words I never thought I'd hear. You are granted full legal custody of your daughter, Emma Margaret Fletcher. I cried in the courtroom. So did Jack. So did Emma. We had one. But more importantly, we were together. Months passed. Emma and I moved to a quiet house near the coast of Georgia. A place with open windows, soft sunlight, and a little garden that she waters every morning. She loves music. She paints just like me. She's shy but strong. And sometimes when she looks at me, I see the tiniest flicker of peace in her eyes. I know healing will take time for both of us, but we're healing together. As for Daniel, he vanished. After the fire, there were sightings, rumors. He used fake names, fake passports. But Jack's not giving up. The investigation is still open. And now, with federal eyes on the case, Daniel's time is running out. Monsters don't get to hide forever. Sometimes I lie awake at night, Emma sleeping in the next room, and I think about the girl I used to be. The girl forced to marry a man she didn't love. The girl who was silenced, beaten, broken. And then, I think about the woman I became. The woman who survived. The woman who fought back. The woman who found her daughter. And now, the woman who tells her story so others can find their voice too. Because if I could speak to every girl out there, every woman trapped, every survivor afraid, I'd say this. You are not weak for staying. You are not broken for being afraid. But you are powerful the moment you choose to fight. And you are never, ever alone. Thank you for listening to my story. If my voice reached you, touched you, gave you strength, then please, backhand index pointing right medium skin tone subscribe, like, and click the notification bell so you don't miss more powerful, true stories of survival and hope. Speech balloon, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever fought through something you thought would destroy you. And always remember, even when they try to silence you, your voice is your power.